Alright guys, welcome back to part 2 of our Wargaming Miniatures video working on the Roman Temple. We're building a Roman Temple today, so let's go ahead and continue working on the Grecian or Roman Temple. Everything's dry. There's something I added last night off camera that I thought I'd add to you. Every time that I make something out of foam board or whatever, I tend to keep the scraps. Okay, I keep little square scraps that I cut out the last time, like all the windows and doors. Remember I told you to save all those? Well, I took 4 of those and I put them on the bottom of the roof. These are the 4 spots that would fit inside here so that when you got your roof on there, let's get it in the right spot. There, this roof does shift a little bit, but it doesn't fall off. Okay, so it doesn't, you know, that if somebody was to bump it or tap it or something like that, the roof doesn't go flying off. It puts it in, and the roof will always go in the right spot, you know, because you'll have those little runners on the inside to keep it where it goes. And you could do that also with your row houses that you did previously. I am going to texture, I'm getting ready to putty these walls, and then I'm also going to texture some of the building. I need to coat all of the edges with a protective coating, as well as the sides and the fronts right here. Now most of that is going to be done with the putty, but anything I'm not going to putty, I'll hit it up with a little bit of Elmer's glue to ensure that it gets sealed up. So let's go ahead and move the camera and let me get this all set up so we can get the show on the road. All right, now what I've got is like a pre-mix of Elmer's. I've got some water added to this. This is a thin version of my school glue. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it along the edges of the roof here. If it comes out. There we go. Here it comes. And no dripping needed. Okay, there we go. And I'm just going to put it along the top edges here to basically seal it so that when I paint it, it doesn't get melted. And then again, I use my Mark I applicator to spread it around, cover any areas that I might have missed, because sometimes the glue will like bubble up and stuff. Perfect. If you do get any drippage, you want to try to ensure that it drips on the inside and not the outside, even though I don't like any drippage, because that's a waste of glue. And there's some areas I missed. Okay, we'll fix that. That's going to take a minute to dry. Now while it's doing that, I'm going to go ahead and do some edges as well, like right along here and right along there. Even though this is going to be hit with plaster, I'm still going to Elmer's. I got a couple here in the front as well. A couple of spots along here, because that's the edges of the foam board, remember? And you're just going to move it around with your finger. And the sides of the steps as well. Don't worry about that drippage there, because I'm going to go with it with my, and I know this white isn't shining up really, or showing up really good with this light. You know, Elmer's is white, the top of the base is white, the foam board is white. If I was using black foam board, it'd be a lot easier, huh? All right. Okay, so all the exposed foam has had a bead or a coating of Elmer's. Hit up anything that might be a drip and you don't want it to be dripping. It's okay to get fingered, like streaks of Elmer's on there. That's okay, just not big clumps dripping down. Because the streaks, that just adds to the texture of the building. All right, I'm going to give that about 10 minutes to dry, and then we'll be back, and we're just gonna do some we'll do some plastering. All right, now the next step, what we're going to do is we're going to make the shingles for the roof, and what I've decided to do was make single shingles across, because this is pretty much the way it works. There are individual shingles, but what I'm going to do is make one long one that goes across, and then I'm going to put beams going down. Those would have been the raised sections, because the way their shingles work are they have these little hooks that the shingle sits here, a shingle sits there, right? And then they've got this sheath piece that goes over it to keep the water from getting down in between the two shingles. So what I'm going to do is just have a solid shingle across here, and then pieces going straight down, and that should look pretty good. So let's go ahead and I'm going to cut out 3 pieces that are 10 inches long, because this roof is 10 inches long. Oh, and FYI, I added a new blade because you see all that imperfection that's on the cuts of the foam board? It wasn't due to the foam board, that was due to my dull X-Acto knife. So I went with a new blade, and then I started cutting. Good. Okay, I think that went all the way through. Look at that. Boom. Okay, so these are the 10-inch shingles, right? Now, how big am I going to make them? Well, I'm going to make them each about an inch, so that when I overlap them, you'll have I'll overlap about half of it. So what you'll see is an exposed half-inch shingle. So basically, they're fairly big shingles, actually. All right, let me get these strips cut out, and I'll be right back. All right, we're back, and hopefully this is going to be enough. This was about 4 times as much wall, and I was thinking that if I overlap it, ceiling, I mean, if I overlap them, I should need twice as many. So I got 2 for this side, 2 for that side. All right, so let's get to shingling. Now, when you go to shingling, you're going to want to shingle from the bottom up. And you could, if you wanted to, consider this bottom piece as the bottom shingle, just because it's all made of the same material, if you wanted to do that. And then you could go up about half an inch. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to actually lay this piece across and shingle it. Mainly, it'll just make everything more durable. All right, now when you lay the glue on the next one, you want to make sure you put it on the wall, the ceiling, and the top part of the shingle. I guess it's not really a shingle. I guess it's a tile. The way they've done it, it's a tile, I think. And then when you put your next shingle on, you want to make sure you put it about halfway over the lower shingle. A little bit of pressure. Try to keep it as level as possible. And there you go. You can see there's a little raised area on the second shingle. That's okay. That gives you a little bit of a shadow effect. That's exactly what you're looking for. All right, I'm going to do the rest of these, and I'll be back. All right, guys, now we are done putting these slats on. Basically, these are going to be the shingle tiles. Now what I need to do, and it looks good, doesn't it? I mean, it's still drying, obviously. You can see the glitter, the gloss of the Elmer's glue. But now I've got a few of these left over. Actually, I got quite a few of these left over. I might have cut too many. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 4 of these, and I'm going to cut them into thin strips. And those thin strips are going to go vertically on here. So let's go ahead and do that. These are exactly 1 inch wide tiles. So I'm going to put them in there like so. And I think I'm going to cut them into 1/4. So 1/4 of an inch each. All right, let me cut these strips out, and I'll be back when they're all cut out. Alright, so now you cut out these 1/4 inch strips, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut them to length, but they're going to lay on here, and I'm going to put them all along through there. So how long do they need to be? They need to go all the way to the bottom. Okay, so it needs to be about that long. Okay, so let's just cut them all simultaneously. Like, get them all the same length. I'm all about doing it all at once. Let's lay this guy in there as well as my guide. These should be easy to cut with scissors. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect anyway, so you know. There we go. So these are the ones we're going to use. Those are the short ones. I don't know. Maybe I can use these for something else. Some trim or something. We'll see. All right. Now the very first one we're going to do is we're going to do the 2 edges. So let's go ahead. I'm going to do it right up along the edge here. Now we're going to bring it down to the bottom of your roof. And it's okay if it sticks up a little bit. I'm going to try to bring it up all the way to the edge, basically giving your roof a perfectly straight line here. But also, I don't know if you can see in the lighting, let me see if I move the light. But there's this raised area right here. That went down too far. That's too far down. We don't want it to be off the edge of the roof. Easy fix. All right, now we're going to do the other side. We're going to do all 4 sides basically first. Because you can see there's a little bit of an imperfection right here, but once you put that straight line, that fixes that. See how that's still imperfect? Well, when you get this close to the edge, there you go. You just created a perfect line. All right, so let's go ahead and get all 4 of these sides done, and I'll be back for the next step. All right, now you should be able to see how that is a straight line here and how it disguises the imperfections that you might have had on the edge. Love my rulers right here. Makes it easy, my life easy. So we're going to go a line at 2. That's a line at 2. Take one of my verticals. Whoops, okay. Apply a little bit of pressure. This one seems like it's a little extra long, but you know what? That's okay. There you go, and you can kind of see that effect that you have by putting the tiles on and then the vertical, I don't know what they call them, runners, ridges, ribs. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing on this side. Okay, so now we got the verticals, we got the horizontals, we got the verticals. So now what we need to do is we need to put a little piece across the top here to disguise the top. So I take one of my leftover 1-inch ones, I look at the top, I'm going to fold it in half, so I lay that down, give it a slight cut. Here, this is just a scratch. Does not go all the way through. Okay, what that does is when you go to fold it, now it'll fold right where you did that scratch.
so you'll have a perfect straight fold. What do they call that? They call that scoring. You score the paper. By scoring the paper, you're actually making it foldable down a perfectly straight line. There you go. See, look at that. Perfection! Okay, so then we're going to glue it. We're going to glue it directly on the top here. So I've decided to apply the glue to the inside. And here, whoa, don't drop this. And there, whoa, okay, there. Go over the top. Line it up with the ends. You notice how this sits on top of your verticals. Okay, it's wanting to slide around. The glue is like making it flexible. So now you apply a little bit of pressure to both sides. Might have to sit here for a moment just applying pressure, allowing the glue to take hold. All right, I'm thinking that roof is starting to look really good. What do you think? What do you think, guys? You like it? You don't like it? Now once I paint it, it's going to look great. It's going to look good. All right, so I'm going to set that off to the side to dry a little bit, and then I'm going to get back to this. Oh, that's not even dry yet either. Okay, I'm going to have to let them both dry before I can get into the puttying. All right, so now that we're ready to go, we're going to go ahead and apply some plaster. Now I'm using the spackle right here. And I'm using half of a Flames War Base as my little applicator if I don't use my finger. And this is dry deck spackling. It goes on pink, dries white. And now I've got a little hobby craft stick here. Now I use that sometimes as a applicator. I can use my finger as an applicator, and I can use this as an applicator. So basically I've got all kinds of different ways to apply it. Now, something we're going to pay particular attention to is the edges of the foam board. Not necessarily the bottom, because that's going to be covered with flock. But this edge, I want to smooth this out, and I want it to disguise the foam board underneath. So what I'm doing is I'm applying some dry deck spackling with my little applicator here. Getting it down inside all those little, because the foam board's got some air pockets and bubbles and stuff like that. We're going to fill all those air bubbles. Might be a little much, okay. Okay. And then I'm going to use just my finger to kind of smooth this down a little bit. See that? Okay. So now when it dries, there won't be those pockets. And you can see it's already starting to dry. All right, let's hit this side. Should also be fairly straightforward, because this one actually has a good cut on it. Now, if there's any gaps between the foam boards, like air, like if it was crooked or didn't dry perfectly straight, this is the time to fill those gaps with the putty and make it invisible. Now something I also do is sometimes I'll put some putty, I usually use my finger for this. I just put a very thin layer, spread it out as much as I can on the board itself. give it a little random textures. That way it's not perfectly smooth. So the foam board is not perfectly smooth. It's got some kind of randomized imperfections on it. See, just a little bit of that, just to give it some random imperfections. All right, now I'm going to do the same thing with this front edge. And what I'm doing now is I'm putting a little plaster around the edge of the door. Because the door did actually kind of bow up a little bit, I'm basically filling up any cracks in the doorway as well. And what that's going to do is it's going to give me a little extra plaster to kind of smear around the face of the temple as well, because I'm going to clean off the door and then any of those, that little extra plaster, I'm just going to smear around the front of the temple. There we go. Make a nice transition there. All right, now something I need to worry about is the gap between the floor and the wall. So I use my applicator to apply plaster as well between the wall and the floor. And what I'm going to do is use the curve, the roundness of the applicator to shape the plaster as well, to kind of give it a rounded curve. I don't know if you can see all that. But then I'm going to go in there with my finger and kind of smooth it out. There you go. You see that? Hope you can see that. All right, we're going to do that on the other side as well. And then I use my finger to kind of smooth it out. But I want there to be plaster kind of all over the place in random spots to kind of give these walls a little bit of texture. As you can kind of see already, they're starting to texture up on the walls. I don't know if you can see this on the camera because it just turned white already. Okay. Now, probably one of the most important pieces of texturing the corners is the stairs, because there's a lot of open foam along the sides of the stairs. That is got to be covered in plaster. It just has to be. Again, I'm not worried about the gap that's right there, because that's flock and grit is going to cover all that. All right, now let's work on the opposite side. Filling holes and making the foam board edges, filling in the foam board edges, as well as any gaps between the wall and the steps. Looks good. Now, trickier might be the front, because this is 1, 2, 3 steps. So I'm still doing the same thing, but now what I'm doing is I'm using my finger to kind of round out the edges. See how I did that? I need to do that on all 3 steps. Now when you're applying this putty, you notice what's going on is I'm applying it to the top step, but some of it's overlapping onto the second step. So I've got to sometimes go back and retouch up each step. I'm going to do all 3 steps once I get them all plastered. I'm going to touch them all up. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this top flat. Then I'm going to make the second step flat. There's a little hole here. That's okay. This is an ancient temple, right? And then right through here. Except it's not ancient at the time that we're playing. It's new, right? Okay. I'm going to touch up the sides with my finger. Touch up the sides with my finger. Make sure all the exposed foam is covered. And it is. That looks pretty good. Alright, now on the roof, you still have some exposed foam right here and on the other side. That absolutely does need to be covered. You know, try not to get it on the applique, using a lot of care, being very careful not to get it on the applique. Because that would ruin all that detail that I paid for. It's only $1, but you know, still $2 for 2 of them. Okay. Alright, that looks good there too. Alright, so let's clean that up a little bit. Not necessary, it's underneath, nobody's going to see that. Now, without using any spray textures or anything, I'm going to use just a little bit of spackle on here to make it kind of look like stucco in a way. Just so it's not perfectly flat. Just so it's not perfectly foam boardy flat. It's got a little bit extra. Now you could take a sand Elmer's or sand paint mixture and put that up here, but I don't think that looks right. I don't think it looks appropriate for the ancient temple or this scale. I think sand is a little bit too big for texturing walls, in my opinion. Okay, so that gives a little stucco texture on there. That's it on the spackling. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that dry, and then we'll come back and paint it. Alright guys, what we're going to do now is, now that everything is dry, we have our spackle is dry, the texturing is dry, but there are still some gaps in the wall. We know that. We will be doing the gridding, the flocking and the basing of that, and that's going to cover all those little minor discrepancies. But first, I'm going to paint the whole model with this Model Masters flat gold gray. Okay, flat gold gray. I don't know if you can see this on the camera, but it is kind of a brown, it's like a tan gray. What I wanted to do was paint it off white, but also kind of a brownish gray. So flat gold gray is the perfect color for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take this model outside, and I'm going to paint this entire thing, including the base. And I'm going to focus on the base actually in one way, because with the paint adhering to the base material of EPVC, then when I go back later and I put the Elmer's glue to apply the grit, it'll actually be able to stick to it. Because right now, Elmer's will not stick to your EPVC. It just doesn't want to do that. It doesn't like to stick to anything perfectly smooth. And then we'll talk about the roof in just a moment. But I am gonna paint the front frescoes and the back fresco with the gold gray. I'm not going to paint the roof with the gold gray, and we'll get into that when I come back. Alright, I'm going to go outside and paint this because I don't want to do that on the inside. Alright guys, we got this sprayed. It's dry to the touch. It's not fully dry. It's only been about 15 minutes. I've sprayed the roof with not only the gold gray on the front and the back, but I also sprayed the ceiling tiles with the just a standard primer gray, because that's the color I wanted it to be. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and flock the base with my sandstone grit. And then what we normally do is we put some water and some Elmer's or PVA, however you want to, whatever you want to call it, into our little mixing tub. And that's not enough. I didn't make enough. That's okay though. And then what we'll do is we'll apply this mixture along the base. I'm only going to do one side at a time because that's how long this is or how big this is. If you had a big box, you could probably do the whole base all in one sitting. Maybe like a, what do you call it? A case of soda or something. If you had some of those boxes, that would be good. Yeah, but I'm only going to do one side at a time. I might have to remix some glue for each side, but that's okay. Now I'm ensuring that I get this glue. You can see how it's puddling up against the wall. I meant for that. Because I want there to be quite a bit of grit right along the edge of the wall. That's going to also help disguise my there we go. That's going to help disguise my imperfections. There's mostly sand, but as you can see, there are some stones in my grit. And that's exactly what I want. I want it to be kind of a randomness. Okay, now I'm going to let that sit in the glue for a couple of minutes, usually just about 2 minutes, to let it soak down into the glue, let the glue get a hold of the grit, and then I shake it off. So in the meantime, I'm going to mix up another set of grit, or I'm sorry, I'm going to mix up another set of glue for the other side, and then we'll do all 4 sides. But before I do any other side, I'll shake this off and show you what the effect is, and then we'll cut out any parts, and I'll come back to you once everything's done. Okay, I've got this next set of glue mixed. I waited a couple of minutes. We're going to go ahead and shake this off. And there you go. You get your glue, your sand look on the side there. That looks really good. Now let's go ahead and do the other side. Alright guys, we got the gold gray on there. There's a little string that can come off. That's from the glue. So we got some gold gray, right? I haven't painted it inside because there's no reason to do that unless you're planning on taking the roof off and putting guys inside there, which you very well might be. And if you are, then I would probably paint the inside a brown or something like that, or maybe even more gold gray on the inside. But I've got ahead and I based the surrounding area around the temple. Now you can base that however you want. I like the sand look. That's just what I like. Now I'm gonna put a couple of pieces of greenery. Like this is just a little piece of lichen that fell out of my lichen box. I'm just gonna go ahead and glue it on here somewhere, just to give a little bit of life to the temple. Just one little piece of green. That's all it's going to be. Nothing except. Oh, you know what a good spot would be for that? Right there. Now I'm putting a little glue on the wall and a little glue on the base itself. And then I'm just going to kind of squish this little piece of lichen in there. Get a little glue all over it. There we go. A little piece of life. Doesn't have to be excessive. I was thinking I'd put maybe 2 or 3 pieces of that all over, but that'll come in the future. I don't need to necessarily do that on the video for you guys. You know how to do that. And if there's any details that you want to paint on this model, you certainly can. Like I will probably paint the door burnt umber, like a super dark brown. That's what I'm going to paint it. But you don't need to watch me paint. I've already done the gold gray here and the primer gray there, and I've got the pins. We go ahead and set those pins inside the body of the thing, and let me put some figures by it and we'll take a look at it, okay? Alright, so we got some Macedonians approaching, coming on the corner, and some Romans in front of a temple right here. I'm basically just going to kind of give you the money shot. Just kind of taking a look what this might look like on your table. That's a pretty epic building. It is actually fairly large. This building that I just finished putting together is 10 inches tall. You know, that's pretty big. We already know it's like 10 inches, it's 12 inches long, the base is, and 10 inches wide, right? No, 8 inches wide, and it's 10 inches tall. Now, if I was to take the roof off, right, and I was going to transport it, this building that I have put together here is about 6 inches tall. So as long as I put it in something that is 6 inches or less, we'll be good. But 4 more inches of that is the roof. Now, that's a pretty epic looking building on the table. I mean, you bring this to a convention or something like that, you're doing really good. You know, I mean, because it'll attract attention. Whoops, it's not centered. There we go. And then you got, you know, it just looks good. I like it. I don't know if this camera will reach this far. It is wired. But you guys, you know, you got your backside. Kind of, you know, backside of a temple. You might be able to, if you were building like a town cityscape or something like this could easily be one of the buildings. If you, you know, Mike and I were talking about this last night, about how this is not really a building that you're going to see on a lot of tables, but when you do, it's going to be impressive, and it could be an objective, it could be the centerpiece of a city, it could be, you know, you could do whatever you want to do with it, really. And it still needs a little bit of detailing. I still need to go in and paint a little bit of the doors. Maybe put a wash on this, but I don't think I'm going to do that. I don't know. I'll have to think about it. But that's pretty much done. This is done. It's just whatever finishing touches you want to add to it. Stain, you know, whatever you want to do. All right, guys. Well, thanks for coming out and checking out my construction of this Roman/Greek temple. Now I need to find a little statuette of Athena or something and put that inside. Another thing you can do is if you've got 15mm miniatures of Romans or whatever, you could always like put them up here and over here and along there and paint them kind of a stone color, like they're statues, like gargoyles, but little 15mm miniatures would be perfect for the outer top part of the roof. And then some people will make a ledge here, deeper ledge than what I've done, like go further in, and then they would put a couple of full-size figures painted like stone statues in there as well. But that's up to you to decide, you know, what kind of accoutrements you want to, or add-ons you want to put on there. And again, I'm sorry I stopped you, but thanks for coming out and checking out this video. If you like these videos and you want to see more of these videos, please like it and subscribe to the channel. And every comment that you drop to me, I read. So if you have any desire to see a certain type of building, World War II, sci-fi, fantasy, historical, anything, just drop it on to me. If you want me to make you something, I'll be glad to make you something as well. There will be a cost. We'll negotiate that later. And there's one more thing I wanted to say. While I'm thinking about it, just go ahead and hit the PayPal me link in the description below to support the channel. But other than that, oh, my next video is probably going to be ruins, Roman or Greek ruins. And again, those can be used anywhere. And I'm going to be using the 3-inch cake pillars, which I already have a few of them. And I just went out and got a couple more so that I would have a total of 6 for a set of ruins. And that could also be another. Oh, wait, no, I'm probably not going to do that. I think I need to make 4 Roman fortification walls. There's a couple of scenarios that I want to play in Hail Caesar that need a Roman fortification wall, and I don't think our group has them. So that might be next. All right, guys, I'll catch you next time.